The twin suns of Luminaria 7 rose like sharpened crescents, casting molten gold across a city carved from light. Crystalline towers climbed into the thin atmosphere like frozen lightning, humming with bioluminescent veins that pulsed in rhythm with the planet's core. The entire world looked engineered for perfection. Flawless, symmetrical, coldly breathtaking. Jack Harper pressed a hand to the shuttle's viewport, trying to absorb all of it at once. Back home, he'd installed soundboards in cramped Manhattan theaters. Now he was staring at an alien metropolis that made Times Square look like a flickering basement lamp. He had no business being here, but fate rarely asked permission. "You look like you're about to faint," the pilot grunted. "Just wondering if my building code certification covers this?" Jack forced a grin. "Pretty sure back home I only wired bars and off-Broadway stages." "Welcome to the Velothi homeworld," the pilot replied. "Don't touch anyone, don't stare at ceremonial jewelry, and don't comment on their kids. You'll survive." Jack wasn't reassured. The shuttle descended toward a landing platform shaped from a single colossal geode. Purple light shimmered across its surface, fracturing into prismatic shards as their engines cut out. When the hatch opened, the air hit him with clean metallic sharpness, like breathing in starlight. Then she appeared. A figure almost 7 feet tall moved toward him with a presence that tightened the air. Her skin glowed in shifting gradients of violet, her elongated skull crowned with crystalline tendrils that glimmered when she breathed. Her eyes, immense, vertical-pupiled, golden, fixed on him with diplomatic precision. "Jack Harper," she said. Her voice carried a musical resonance that made his name sound newly invented. "I am Governor Sileri. Welcome to Luminaria 7, he swallowed, hard. "Ma'am, honor's mine. I hope my equipment lives up to your standards. That remains to be seen." A faint smile hinted she didn't enjoy small talk. "My people value excellence. You are here to install human sound systems for the Unity Gala. Precision is essential." He nodded. Clutching his case so tightly, his knuckles went white. She guided him through corridors that looked like the interior of a living gemstone. Light shifted underfoot with each step, responding to their movement. Alien citizens glided past with ethereal grace, pausing just long enough to evaluate him as though inspecting a curious artifact. Jack had grown up in the Bronx. Being judged was nothing new. Being judged by 7-foot-tall, crystal-crowned aristocrats was a different flavor of discomfort. They stopped at a massive set of iridescent doors. "Your quarters?" Sileri said. "Training begins tomorrow. Do not wander into restricted wings. Any reason why?" Her gaze cooled. Some areas require discretion. He didn't push. He'd been on enough job sites to know when a client drew a boundary. Jack lasted exactly 3 days before stumbling into the event that would change everything. The governor's reception hall, stretched wider than a football field, its vaulted ceiling alive with swirling bioluminescence. The Unity Gala preparations had drawn ambassadors from multiple colonies, each wearing shimmering attire that refracted light like broken rainbows. He stuck to the perimeter, pretending to inspect a speaker array. In truth, he was trying to look busy enough to avoid conversation. Then the hall fell into an eerie hush. A young Velothi girl entered, moving with an unsteady gait that shattered the room's practiced elegance. Her legs struggled under her, every step forced through sheer will. Pain etched across her face, but she kept going, head high, refusing to bend. Jack recognized the effort. He'd walked like that after, blowing his knee during a rehearsal in his 20s. Before, his dance career died on the operating table. The whispers began instantly. Tragic. Unfit. For ceremony. Shouldn't be displayed. Displayed. Like she was an object, not a person. Governor Sileri stood across the hall, her expression a mask carved from glass. Only the tiniest tremor along her jaw betrayed her agony as she watched her daughter break under the weight of 1,000 stares. The girl lasted 10 steps before fleeing, nearly collapsing as she escaped through a side door. Jack felt something inside him snap. Without thinking, he set down his tools and followed. A soft melody drifted through the corridor ahead. Haunting. Layered harmonics unlike anything he'd heard. The sound pulled him to a small door, marked in flowing script. Against better judgment, he pressed the panel. The door slid open. The girl sat in the center of the room, framed by softly glowing walls. Posters, or their alien equivalent, decorated every surface. Music crystals hovered near her, projecting light and sound into the air like drifting constellations. She wasn't crying, she was dancing. Her legs remained still, supported by a curved mobility chair, but her upper body moved with liquid precision. Her hands carved meaning through the air. Her torso swayed in elegant spirals. Her expression transformed into something luminous, as though the music reached inside and lifted her free of gravity itself. Jack watched. Breath caught in his throat. She was extraordinary. When she finally noticed him, she startled. Shame flooded her features as her skin shifted to deep violet. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know anyone was here." "You shouldn't apologize," Jack said softly. I've worked with trained dancers who couldn't do what you just did." She stared at him as if the compliment were a foreign language. "You're the human technician," she murmured. "Mother said you came to install the gala systems." "Jack Harper," he said, stepping inside. "And you're Ara." He lowered himself to the floor beside her, careful not to invade her space. "My knee's shot, so getting up might take half a century." "Hope you don't mind." Ara blinked, then laughed. A soft, musical sound, surprisingly warm. "You were a dancer?" she asked. "Broadway chorus lines," he said. "Nothing fancy. But dance is like breathing. Once you lose it, feels like the world turns quiet." She looked down at her hands. "My world has always been quiet." He understood more from that single line than 1,000 medical briefings could explain. "What were you dancing to?" he asked. "Traditional ceremonial music. The opening piece for the Unity Gala." She hesitated. "Children like me aren't allowed to perform. I watch the recordings and imagine." Jack felt heat rise behind his eyes. "The cruelty was so casual here, so normalized." "Ara," he said gently, "who told you you don't belong on that stage?" "My people," she whispered. "All of them." "That's a lot of people to be wrong at once," Jack said. She looked up sharply, hope flickering, then dying almost immediately. "It doesn't matter." "Mother won't let me try." Jack leaned closer. "If you wanted to learn, really learn, would you let me teach you?" Her breath caught. "Nobody's ever offered," she said. "They only tell me what I can't do." He smiled. "Then maybe they never looked closely enough." Behind them, the door chimed. Governor Sileri stood in the doorway, eyes narrowing at the sight of Jack sitting beside her daughter. Conflict flashed across her face. Authority, fear, and something that looked painfully like love. "What?" she asked quietly. "Is happening here?" Jack didn't flinch. "A conversation you've been avoiding," he said. Her gaze flicked to Ara, then back to him. "This world is not kind to difference, Mr. Harper." "Then maybe," Jack answered, rising slowly, "it's time someone taught it how." The governor held his stare for a long, heavy moment, and the future of her entire civilization shifted. A thin violet haze drifted across Luminaria 7's morning skyline, tinting the crystalline city in muted lavender. The world's flawless symmetry felt even sharper after the night's confrontation. Jack stood alone in the training hall, surrounded by holographic schematics of Velothi sound architecture, but he wasn't thinking about speakers or cables. He kept seeing Ara's face from last night, hope flickering behind fear like a candle trapped in glass. The door behind him hummed open. "You are early," Governor Sileri said. Jack turned. She stood framed in the doorway, posture rigid, expression carved from polished stone. Only her eyes betrayed the strain under her control. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Your world's beds are soft enough to swallow a man whole." "That is not why you are awake." Her gaze pinned him. "You intend to continue what I interrupted." Jack folded his arms. "She has talent." "Real talent. You know it. I know it. Why pretend otherwise?" "Because this society is merciless." She stepped further inside, her voice low. "If Ara stands in the wrong place, they will crush her without hesitation. Our traditions have no patience for imperfection. Then it's time someone broke your traditions." Her silence sharpened. "You presume much," she said. Maybe, Jack replied. But I've seen what happens when a kid thinks they're worthless. I lived it. He tapped his injured knee. One mistake and my entire world went dark. Took years to understand I wasn't broken, my dream was. There's a difference. Sileri's expression shifted. Barely, but enough. Show me, she said. Show me what you believe she can do. Ara waited in a side chamber, hands clasped tightly, posture nervous but excited. When Jack entered, her eyes brightened. I thought you wouldn't come, she murmured. I said I'd teach you, he replied. I meant it. She exhaled shakily, relief melting the tension around her shoulders. The chamber's floor brightened as Jack activated low-light training mode. Soft pulses of color rolled under their feet, reacting to motion. Ara positioned herself in her mobility chair, adjusting the spine support with careful precision. Let me see your natural range again, Jack said. No hesitation. Follow the music the way you feel it. Ara activated a ceremonial frequency crystal. The haunting harmonics filled the room. Strange, fractal, grief-tinged. She lifted her arms, moving with instinctive fluidity. Her fingers traced invisible constellations. Her torso followed the rhythm with astonishing control, angles melting into controlled curves. Jack studied her technique with professional intensity. She wasn't improvising. She was translating emotion into motion with a clarity most dancers never mastered. You're a prodigy, he said when the music faded. She flushed pale silver. That is impossible. No, Jack corrected gently. It's ignored. Not impossible. Her breath trembled. What now? Now, he said, rolling up his sleeves. We build a routine around what your body does best. Their first hour focused on isolations, shoulder rolls, arm extensions, spiraling torso work. Ara picked up every sequence with uncanny speed. Some transitions were rough, but she adapted instantly, adjusting angles, refining lines, experimenting without fear. Jack rarely saw that kind of hunger. He'd trained overachievers, perfectionists, prodigies pushed by ambitious parents. But Ara wasn't any of those. She wasn't dancing to impress. She was dancing to exist. At the second hour, Jack paused. Water break. You're pushing hard. I feel alive, she whispered. I have never had permission to move like this. You always had permission, he said. Nobody gave it to you. You already owned it. She looked at him as if he'd gifted her a new vocabulary. From the doorway, a soft voice interrupted. You are making progress. Governor Sileri stood watching, arms folded, doubt and awe mingling uneasily. Ara's joy flickered into uncertainty. Mother, Sileri raised a hand. Continue. Ara froze. Jack stepped closer. You're not in trouble, he assured her. We show her what you can do. That's all. Ara nodded and resumed the sequence he'd set. Her hands swept through the air like ribbons of living light, her torso bending with controlled elegance. Jack guided her transitions, adjusting her angles, never touching her without permission. Sileri watched without blinking. When Ara finished, breathless and glowing, the governor released a slow exhale. I did not know. Her voice wavered, the first crack in her controlled facade. I did not realize she had this. Yes, Jack said softly. You did. You just didn't want Hope to hurt her. Sileri flinched. Ara looked between them. Mother, I can do more. You can, Sileri whispered. But you must be cautious. The nobles, Jack cut in. She doesn't need the nobles' approval. You underestimate the cost, Sileri snapped. No, Jack answered. I'm refusing to accept it. Sileri stared at him with a mix of irritation and reluctant respect. The days that followed blurred into an intense rhythm. Jack handled sound system installations in the mornings, weaving Earth tech into Velati architecture. Afternoons belonged entirely to Ara. Their secret training sessions became the center of both their lives. Ara grew stronger and more confident. She refined her musical intuition until her movements synced perfectly with every harmonic shift. Jack adjusted choreography constantly, designing a fusion style the world had never seen. They kept the sessions private. Ara's safety depended on it, or so Jack believed. But secrets never lasted long on Luminaria 7. By the fourth day, Sileri arrived unannounced, expression tight. Word is spreading, she said. The noble assembly has heard rumors that my daughter is training for the gala. Ara went rigid. Jack felt heat rise under his skin. Larry continued. They demanded an explanation. Counselor Dex Malar insists that allowing Ara to perform would corrupt the sanctity of ceremonial tradition. Jack's jaw clenched. That man needs a hobby. Or therapy. Larry ignored that. They believe humans are influencing her improperly. Ara's voice trembled. Am I causing trouble? No, Jack said. They're terrified of change. That's not your fault. Larry studied Ara for a long moment. Do you want to continue? Ara hesitated, only for a heartbeat, then lifted her chin. Yes? Larry closed her eyes briefly, accepting the inevitable. Then I will face the assembly, she said. But you must be prepared for consequences. Consequences can wait, Jack replied. Right now, she needs a routine. Ara gave him a grateful smile, soft but fierce with growing confidence. Later that night, near the end of an exhausting session, Ara's movement faltered. Her arms dropped. Her torso spasmed. Her breath hitched into a painful gasp. Jack lunged forward, steadying her. Hey, easy. Talk to me. Her entire body trembled. I can't breathe. He lowered her into the chair's full support mode, activating its stabilization fields. Her skin had drained to pale lavender, eyes unfocused. Panic clawed at him. Medical staff arrived within minutes, rushing her into a portable bio-support cradle. Larry appeared seconds later, her composure shattered. What happened? She demanded. Jack swallowed hard. Overexertion. I pushed the transitions too fast. Ara tried to speak, but the medics placed a mask over her mouth and her voice vanished under the hum of the stabilizer. Larry turned on Jack with grief-sharpened fury. This cannot continue, she said. She is fragile. She could die. Jack stepped back, throat tight. Then let's redesign the routine, he said. We adapt. We slow it down. We shape it around what she can safely do. No, Larry snapped. I will not risk another episode. The training ends. Ara reached out weakly, fingers shaking. Mother, please. Her whisper broke the room. Larry froze, torn between terror and love. Jack met her eyes. Let her finish what she started. Not to impress anyone, not for politics, for herself. Silence stretched. Finally, Larry whispered, You are asking me to gamble with my child's life. No, Jack said softly. I'm asking you to stop letting fear chain her to the shadows. Ara squeezed her mother's hand with feeble determination. And Larry, for the first time in years, yielded. Then we do this safely, she said. And the entire world will answer for what happens next. The fight was no longer about tradition. It was about a mother's courage and a human's refusal to let a gifted girl remain invisible. Twilight bled across Luminaria 7 like molten glass, staining the crystalline towers in luminous indigo. The Unity Gala Amphitheater, an enormous geode hollowed into a cathedral of light, pulsed with rising anticipation. Thousands of iridescent seats shimmered as dignitaries filled the tiers, their voices weaving through the air in multilingual threads of expectation and speculation. Jack stood backstage with his hands braced on the railing, trying to steady his breath. He'd performed in pressure-packed theaters before, but nothing felt like this, a performance that might shift an entire planet's belief system. Far beyond the amphitheater walls, dozens of alien civilizations tuned in through holographic channels. Every lens, every eye, every political rival, all of them waited to see a disabled Velothi girl fail or rise. A soft hum approached from behind him. Ara rolled forward in her mobility chair, wearing ceremonial attire altered to suit her needs. Her gown flowed like liquid starlight, textured with silver filaments that would respond to the movements of her arms and torso. The fabric glowed faintly, attuned to her heartbeat. "You're pale," she said softly. "I'm human," Jack replied, clearing his throat. "We do fear differently." Her lips curved into a shy smile. She'd grown steadier over the past days, calmer in spirit if not in body. The medical scare had shaken all of them, but once Sileri approved the revised routine, Ara committed to each rehearsal with quiet determination. She tugged his sleeve gently. "Are you nervous?" Jack huffed out a laugh. "Terrified." "That makes two of us." Their shared anxiety softened the air between them. Governor Sileri arrived moments later, her presence commanding even without a single word. Tonight she wore ceremonial robes embedded with fractal crystal patterns that caught the light like captured stars. Yet beneath her regal calm, Jack sensed a storm of emotions she didn't dare show. Ara straightened. "Mother!" Sileri bent to touch her daughter's forehead, a traditional sign of blessing. "Remember what we discussed. Breathe steadily, pace your movements. And if anything feels wrong, I will signal," Ara nodded. "I can do this." Sileri's voice softened. "You already have," the stage director signaled. Performers were rotating, finishing their final poses. Polished youths with flawless symmetry executed traditional routines with mechanical precision, the sort of perfection Valathi society clung to like religion. Then came the announcement that changed the room's atmosphere in a single breath, presenting Ara Valara, daughter of Governor Sileri, performing an interpretive fusion piece. Jack heard gasps ripple like a shockwave. Whispers stabbed through the amphitheater. "Impossible! She cannot be serious. A political stunt, an embarrassment." Jack clenched his jaw until it hurt. Ara's hands trembled on the controls of her chair. He crouched beside her. "Look at me." She did. "You don't need them to believe in you," Jack said. "You just need to dance." Something steadied in her gaze. The lights dimmed. Ara rolled forward onto the stage alone. A hush fell, too deep, too sharp, too heavy. The kind of silence that waited for ruin. The opening ceremonial harmonics resonated from the crystal walls, haunting and ancient. Ara lifted her arms slowly, her hands carving the first shapes of the routine. Her torso arced with a softness that broke the rigid lines of the ceremonial forms, not defying tradition, but reshaping it. The audience watched with cold politeness, not impressed, not moved, not cruel, simply dismissive. Jack's heart hammered. Then he triggered the earth rhythms they'd integrated into the routine. Ara responded instantly. The shift ignited her movements, weaving alien harmonics with human beats. Her arms sliced the air in precise patterns. Her hands shimmered with silver light as her gown reinterpreted her motion into flowing arcs. Her torso spiraled with a fluidity no Valathi had ever performed. Whispers changed tone, not pity now, confusion, then fascination. Ara transitioned into the centerpiece sequence. Jack had designed specifically to counter prejudice, movements that highlighted her strength rather than her limitations. She used the mobility chair as an extension of her art, not hiding behind it, not fighting it, but making it an instrument. Clusters of light erupted from her gown, mapping trails of motion across the crystalline dome. Every sweep of her arms, every rotation of her torso, created luminous pathways that filled the stage like cosmic calligraphy. And then came the moment designed to define her forever. Ara lifted her hands above her head, palms facing inward. The gown responded, casting silver flame around her. Her torso leaned forward, shoulders rippling in controlled tension. Her entire frame tightening into an impossible stillness. Not weakness, but mastery. The amphitheater froze. Even the air seemed to pause. Ara held that pose, a girl who could not stand, yet stood taller than any tradition that ever tried to bury her. Jack's breath faltered. He'd seen beauty in performance before, but nothing like the power radiating from her now. A final harmonic swell filled the chamber. Ara lowered her arms slowly, silver trails cascading behind her. Silence gripped the crowd. One heartbeat. 2, 3. Then the first applause erupted, sharp, loud, off-world. The visiting diplomats rose, overwhelmed. Their reaction shattered the room's restraint. Valathi nobles rose reluctantly, then fully, unable to deny what they'd witnessed. Applause grew into a roar. Crystal walls vibrated from the force. The amphitheater became a tidal wave of emotion. Jack looked to the governor's box instinctively. Sillery stood motionless, both hands covering her mouth. Her eyes overflowed. She wasn't just crying. She was breaking open in front of her entire civilization. A leader who had never shown weakness now wept freely for her daughter. No one dared judge her. Ara turned toward her mother. Tears glimmered in both their eyes. For 16 years, they had lived trapped in silence. Now the world cried with them. Jack felt his pulse soften. This was HFY at its purest. Not domination, not superiority, but the human instinct to refuse injustice. The performance ended. But Ara wasn't done changing the galaxy. Hours later, after interviews, formal acknowledgments, and political chaos, Jack slipped into a quiet service corridor, exhausted but alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. Sillery found him leaning against a crystalline support beam, running a hand through his hair. "You disappear often," she said. "Part of the charm," he replied. She approached slowly, expression stripped of authority. "Jack, thank you. You don't have to. I do." Her voice softened. "Tonight you gave my daughter something I never had the courage to give her." Jack swallowed. "She did the work. I just guided her. You saw her when everyone else looked away." Sillery paused, as if weighing a heavy choice. "And you made me see her all over again." He felt his heartbeat stutter. Her voice lowered. "This world will change because of what happened tonight. And so will mine." The corridor dimmed as the crystalline lights shifted into night cycle tones. Their reflections shimmered on the smooth walls. Ara appeared at the end of the hallway, rolling toward them with a grin that glowed. "They want me to perform at the Galactic Arts Council," she announced breathlessly. "The whole council." Jack laughed. "Of course they do." Sillery touched her daughter's shoulder gently. "You changed them," she whispered. "You changed all of us." Ara reached for Jack's hand and squeezed it. "We changed them." Jack felt something settle in his chest. Belonging. Purpose. Warmth. Sillery looked between them, her golden eyes softening into something he'd never seen on her face before. Hope. Ara raised her chin. "What happens now?" Jack smiled. "Now," he said, "you light up the galaxy." And Luminaria 7, once obsessed with perfection, began learning a new definition of beauty.